Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. It is January 24th. Government grants. It's the government. This is the best government party we'll ever have. I love seeing some of my favorite faces and a whole bunch of new ones. What's up, Sean? I see you. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Dr. Sharon.
Oh, so many new faces. I love it. We've got quite a bit of our MPP family on here too. We'll get started in just a minute, guys. Is anybody though, while we're sort of letting everybody into the room, anybody have any cool milestones, accomplishments, wins, anything happy, anything you want to share? Anybody got anything to share with us today before we dive in? It's still January, the beginning 24. Somebody's got to still have something positive to share.
I woke up this morning.
Amen, Sean. I feel that.
Amen.
Well, I'll just share this while I'm excited. I got 2 calls this week, and yes, it's early January, but I've already secured over $150,000 this month.
Woo!
Grant. So that's a
That
happy
is
day
a
for me. I
win.
got one of the messages just about 10 minutes ago. So happy.
That's awesome. That is a way to start January 2024. I love that. That's a good win.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. That's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to share? Accomplishments, wins, milestones? No, okay, we got it.
I just got started with
Oh, sure. Hi, Trey.
Hi. I just got started with my nonprofit with you, so hopefully we're in there soon.
Yes, that is a win. She just came on board today, you guys. So we'll have a 501c3 for you probably within the next month or two. That's super exciting.
Yes, hopefully.
And then you'll be back on here asking about government grants.
All of it. I need that. The 150, I need that.
Right?
Need it for the kiddos.
All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started today. You guys know, for those of you that are used to being here with us, I keep it super informal. Questions are always welcome throughout. If you're uncomfortable taking yourself off mute and asking a question, you can drop it into the chat box and I will make sure that I get your guys' questions. You are here today with us at the Lunch and Learn with the Nonprofit Plug. We have a guest speaker today. We're going to be talking about government grants, which is the type of money we all want to be getting, and it's some of the hardest to get. But I don't know, maybe after today's guest speaker, it won't be as hard as we all thought since we now have support for it. So we're going to kind of dive right in. So excited to see all the different faces today and our individuals that join us all the time. I always love seeing the faces. And so this is exciting. So without further ado, I am so excited to introduce to you guys Janine. She is a government grants expert guru specialist. I don't know if she has that self-proclaimed title, but Alex and I are giving her that title. She has been so helpful to us in questions and sort of navigating the government grant world, which there is so much funding available through government grants, but it's not the easiest and it's not always the most intuitive to access and to understand those applications. So we have Janine with us today. I'll be putting contact information and dropping that in the chat for both the Nonprofit Plug and Janine, should you need the support of both of our organizations. Other than that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Janine, and let you get started with, of course, if you can just give us an overview and a little bio of yourself and tell us about how wonderful you are. Please gloat as much as you can. We want to hear it all. And then just kind of give us like a overview on government grants 101 and like, what is that? And then we'll kind of dive into the intricacies about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I am totally excited to be here with everyone. I always love the opportunity to be able to share information, and because there's so much information out there that is not correct, a bunch of fallacies. So today I hope to clear up a lot of that information for you so that we can kind of get you in the right direction. My name, I should have told you first, is Janine Ackles Dublin. Actually, I just got married 2 years ago. So a lot of times I have to remember to put both names on there. But I am she, and I am the owner of Grantastic Consulting. Notice the grant part there. I've been in the industry probably about 22 years now. I've been writing all types of grants, anywhere from small nonprofits up to large municipalities, state nonprofits, whatever the case is, they employ me for those things. I do training, I do webinars. I have a large Facebook group where it's just free information. You ask questions, I get you the answers. So we just try to make sure that everybody gets the information that they need. So one of the things I like to start off doing before I even go into the government grant part of it, making sure that you're grant ready. Because before you can get a government grant, you got to make sure that you are grant ready. So, it's not just going to get that form 501c3, because a lot of people think, oh, I've got my 501c3 and it's time for me to get grants. No, it doesn't work that way. I have run across so many organizations that have been 501c3s for years and never got a penny of grant money. And usually it's because they're not ready. And one of the things that makes them not ready is usually they don't have a strong board. Make sure you have a strong board, especially when you're talking about getting these government grants. Got to have a strong board. And what by that I mean, I had one of my clients lost out on a grant because they did not talk with their board about getting this grant. And we're talking about a $750,000 grant. So the other board members didn't know anything about the grant. And so they decided that this particular organization was not ready because they couldn't show the capacity. So that's the next thing. Make sure you have the capacity to be able to receive the types of grants you are asking for. So if you've never received $500,000, you may want to start at $25,000 to get started. So that just make sure you have the capacity to run these grants, and also make sure you're set up correctly. A lot of people go after these large grants, and you applied for the 501c3 easy. If you're within your first 3 years, you're not supposed to get over $50,000 per year for those first 3 years. So be mindful if you didn't file for the traditional one, which is the $600 fee for that particular one, that's the traditional. Then what happens is that you could risk a big fine or either risk losing your nonprofit status altogether. So you want to make sure. And if for some reason someone says, hey, I want to give you $100,000, you need to get ahead of it and let the IRS know that you actually didn't have that plan when you filed. Those are just little things, just trying to give you little tidbits. Anybody got any questions so far, or need to make a comment about something before I jump dead into some of the other stuff? Okay, good group here. Another thing I wanted to hit on, and I let them know also, one of the things I want you to know, faith-based nonprofits, and they are able to get grants. But I want to talk about that a little bit because churches have been given a lot of the wrong information. If you are a church, please, by all means, do not get a nonprofit 501c3. Your church is actually a nonprofit by nature because you are a church. If you want to receive grant funding, make up a ministry or something outside the realms of the church, which it can still be faith-based to be able to do that. Otherwise, your religion is no longer your religion. It's what the state says you can do. So you do not want the state. I'll give you a great example so you can understand. When we had COVID, I live in the state of North Carolina. When we had COVID, our governor closed the doors to every church, every organization, everywhere. But if you were a church, you could do whatever you wanted to do, kind of within the confines of what you wanted to do. But if you opened your church door and you had a 501c3, you were fined a nice little amount of money. And also outside of that, you lost your 501c3s because the state said you couldn't open your doors and you opened them anyway. So understand, this is just one example of what happens. So the state actually owns you when you're a church, if you get a 501c3. So I try to tell people, stay away from that so that you're not having to, a lot of times churches have their own books. They have different things that they do. So you want to just separate the two. And it also makes you, if you have a church nonprofit, it also stops you from getting a lot of the grants that you could get because they don't want to give grants usually to churches themselves, unless it belongs to some type of, unless your church conference or something gives away those grants. Your church itself will have a hard time getting grants if they think it's just for the church, because they don't want to fund anything of that sort. Anybody have any questions about that? Well, good. So now that we're getting to talking, let's talk about government grants. What in the world are we doing with these government grants? How do we get some of this funding? Well, let me tell you. First off, if you are a 501c3 in good standing, and also you don't have to be a 501c3. A lot of people don't know that. Many government grants don't require you to be a 501c3. They just require you to have a state nonprofit and incorporate it through your state. If you are already doing duties and things that you want to do that the grant requires. So understand, those are just two things. A lot of people don't understand that. You have to read and understand that. But before you can ever get a government grant, first things first, you have to register your entity in the SAM system, which is the System for Award Management for the government. That's sam.gov. Everybody hates sam.gov because it's cumbersome. It takes a long time. It drives you nuts if you don't know how to answer those questions. But you must have a registration through there. The first thing they do is they give you a unique ID that you will use throughout the life of your business. But in order to get government grants, that's where they keep track of what you are doing through that government grant system. So make sure you have your SAM number. And also, even if you're not applying for, quote, government grants, you still need a SAM number, because many of the organizations that you may be applying for monies are sub-granting from grants they received from the government, and you have to have a UEI through your SAM registration in order to even receive those funds. So make sure you get that SAM regardless. I was just looking to see if we had any questions. Looking in the chat. So, are there some other questions before I go any farther? Alex or, Dr. E, either one of you guys have anything for me? Okay, well, we'll keep going. All right. So, and remember everyone, please put, if you have anything in the chat, oh, I do see a question in there. It says, what's the actual amount that you can earn within the first 3 years of your, I'm assuming you're asking the first 3 years of your nonprofit. Well, it just depends on which nonprofit form you filled out. If you filled out the EZ, you shouldn't be doing more than $50,000 a year, usually in the first 3 years, because that's when they'll come after you. After the 4th and 5th year, they're not really on you like that, and you can kind of explain yourself with those. But those first 3 years, they're really looking at those hard. Now, if you did the traditional form, which is just your traditional form 1023, not the EZ, but the 1023 period, there's no limit. You can raise as much as you want. They're not going to ask about it. You just have to make sure you're turning in those 990s to reflect whatever it is that you've been receiving.
I was just going to add in the 990 part, but for those of you who did do a 1023 EZ, don't be concerned or scared. if you did the 1023 easy and you didn't necessarily anticipate greater than 50,000 in gross receipts in your first couple of years, and you do end up getting it, sometimes it happens, you didn't anticipate it, year 2 or 3 comes and oh my God, you get a $500,000 grant, which has happened to several of our clients. Don't stress. It just changes the reporting to the IRS and we take care of that part for you. So it does happen, but that is the difference between the two forms.
Right. And that's what I was saying when I said earlier to stay ahead of it. Because if you don't report it, then they're going to think something's wrong. And then you're going to get into some trouble. So what she said is definitely correct. So in even in keeping that, most of your government grants, a lot of them, you can get them. Usually, I have rarely seen a government grant less than 10,000. The smallest I've seen has been about 10,000, but they go on up to millions of dollars. So you definitely want to make sure you are in compliance so that you can get the monies that you need. And a lot of times, and the biggest thing about government grants, you have two. You have some grants that tell you you have to have a match, and then you have other grants that don't require a match. I'll talk about both of those just so that you understand. The ones that ask you to have a match, in most cases, it's not just a cash match, dollar for dollar, unless they actually state that. But 75 to 85% of those grants allow you to use other things, such as volunteer hours. Right now, volunteer hours are equal to about $29 and some change. I can't remember what the actual cent is at this moment, but it's $29 and some change per hour. So make sure you are keeping good records of volunteer hours, because when it comes down to doing these grants and they're looking for something to match, you could have $100,000 in those types of in grants instead of just cash, because that's going to help you out a lot. It could be you have in-kind money. In-kind money is things like you're using a building and someone's allowing you to use that building and you're not paying for it. But the value of what that building is, that would also help you as well. So you want to make sure that you are recording everything. Like she said, keep good records. Good records is going to be your best friend, because a lot of times you're going to need that money to show, to be able, and when you actually apply, they're going to want proof of this. So even when you have your volunteers, don't just put down a number there. Show volunteer logs where people have actually signed in, not just we did this many people this year, we had 100 hours. They don't care about that, because anybody can give a number. They want to see the proof. They want to see some projects you've done, and they want to see signatures. They want to see dates and times. And they look at that, and then make sure when you're showing it that it doesn't look like you just wrote this today, because obviously different papers or different ink and all that they're looking at that stuff. Believe me, trust me. So just make sure you are keeping accurate records when it comes to that. Now, there'll come a chance when you may not need a match. So if you're not in need of a match, they tell you what it is you can actually use that grant for. And a lot of times it has to depend on what area you're in. So understand they have different tiers. They have hub zones. Usually if you're in hub zones, you can you don't have to provide a match in many ways, or it's a lower percentage match. So if you live in a hub zone, or you're going to be serving in a hub zone area, so you need to find out where the hub zone areas are where you live at, because if you live in those hub zones, or you're going to be working in those hub zones, that a lot of times will give you a chance to get up front and get some of the grant monies as well, to be able to do that. So just make sure you just kind of know, and you can do that. You can go on the government grant site and put up hub zone and put your zip code in, and it'll tell you whether you live in a hub zone or not. So those are just things you need to know about where you are. The other thing is, once you sign into the sam.gov system, the next thing you have to do is make sure you're in the grants.gov. Grants.gov is a lot of fun for me. Most of you guys, once you get in there, it is so complicated because if you're not used to searching for grants or understanding what you need to look for, it looks like you're lost somewhere and don't know how to come out. So one of the things we do is we show you how, I like to show people how to use that grants.gov, you know, what to look for. So knowing how to navigate through there is going to be half of your battle. If someone gives you a government grant number and say, hey, this is the grant, you can definitely put that in there and say, boom, I can find the grant. But I bet you, myself included, I can't tell you one government grant number to put in there for you to go search for. So you have to know how to search through everything on there. So when you go into grants.gov, they're going to connect it to your sam.gov registration. So they're all going to be the same logins. So you're not going to have to worry about a bunch of different ones, just the same one. And once you go in, you will be able to go in and search for different ones. I tell people, if you are, let's say you are somebody in the health field, I would say, okay, what kind of grants are we looking for? I would say click on the agencies that have the type of grants you're looking for. NIH, maybe, you know, let's start there. The departments of health. You want to look through all of those so that you don't get this wide myriad of grants and you don't know what you're looking for. And you also want to make sure you look at it, instead of looking for closed grants or forecasted, don't worry about those. Look for open grants only. And say who, and go through the list where it says over there, what kind of an entity are you? If you are a nonprofit entity, what you want to do is click on the nonprofit entity so that it will only bring up ones that are for nonprofits. Because otherwise, the government grants gives you everything. Anybody can apply for them. You have anything from individuals all the way down to for-profits, municipalities. It just depends. So you want to be able to narrow it down. I would say the easiest place, if you want to learn how to start looking for grants before you go into the big grants.gov system, if you want to start looking for it, the very first place I started looking at grants was a little small site. It's called Grant Gopher. That's the easiest site ever. grantgopher.com. When you go into Grant Gopher, you will learn, when you start learning how, and just practice in there, how to find grants. And then they do have the government grants in there as well, but it's the easiest way to get soaking wet so you can learn how to find grants, what the grants are, how to read those grants. It's a big difference from grants.gov, but if you start learning on that level, once you get over to grants.gov, you can learn how to choose the categories. So that's something that you would definitely want. I've been talking a lot, so let me pause and see what questions you may have or something you guys need to add. Dr. Sharon, you want to add something?
I just want to have you, just because this was a recent experience with one of our clients, kind of go over and reiterate the importance of having the sam.gov, the grants.gov, and that UEI number, and the play that they all play together. And not only just having those, but the importance of it being connected to your nonprofit because of the payout information. If you can kind of go over that and just re-emphasize how critical it is, start the process now.
Yes. That's one of the things, when I take someone on as a client, the very first thing we do, besides, find out who you are on that onboarding checklist, it's get your sam.gov registration in. And the main reason is because I've seen it sometimes it can take 3 weeks and sometimes it can take 3 months. Honestly, it depends on what information you have, how well they can verify it, and what other information they need. And the biggest problem is once you get that SAM number, the unique identifier is what it is, that UEI. You have to have that, and it needs to be under the name of your nonprofit because that's who they're going to pay. You can't receive funding from another nonprofit. Like if you say, okay, like fiscal sponsorship is something that you can do on the foundation side, get the monies, and then they can use it for you. But in the government grant world, you can't do that unless they specifically say that you are allowed to subgrant this grant. And then if you're allowed to subgrant, you still have to have a UEI because they're going to check the status of the people that they have subgranted to. So you must have that UEI. So the UEI and a full SAM registration, because a UEI without the full SAM registration, you're still not going to be able to apply for any grants. If you have someone else that is going to be applying for you, you can go into your grants.gov system and give them rights to apply for you, but you still must be the full entity. And I tell people all the time, when you come across a government grant, in most cases, most of them, the average grant that we're looking at, they're usually open for about 60 days. You do have some that are open up for years that have the millions of dollars in it, but the average grants that they're doing per year, usually 60, maybe 90 days. But if you know that a grant is going to be coming up, you need to make sure right then you go ahead and submit for it, because it's not always the most efficient process. And then you can get all the way down to the end and get to where they're looking for that cage code. The cage is where you have the biggest problem. They fight you, and if you have one thing wrong, it could be a dot, a period, a hyphen, anything that does not match will kick it out of the system. And if you don't know what it is, it could take you weeks to get that to go through. Once you get that to go through, then you are good to go. But I cannot stress enough about this UEI. You will miss out on a lot of funding if you do not get that SAM registration. So make sure, because this is how I actually met these wonderful ladies here at the Nonprofit Plug. They had a situation. One of the clients wanted to apply for something. They had a UEI, I think they had, but they did not have the registration.
She got her UEI the day after the grant application closed.
Oh no. But they were upset, but I was explaining to them that there's nothing you can do. The government does what they want to do. We can't rush them. And if they didn't give it to you before the grant was ready, there's nothing we can do. We can't submit afterwards. They have strict rules about submitting late. You either get it in on time or you're not going to get it. You have to wait to the next cycle. There's no, please help me. My computer crashed. No, they don't care. What it is that you either have it in on time or you're not going to have it at all. Okay. So make sure you have that UEI. Even if you're just at the state level and you don't have a 501c3, still get the UEI, because there's still so many opportunities out there. So make sure, because a lot of times if you're waiting on the big 501c3, that one can take 6 to 9 months to get back. So, but if you have your UEI, you still can apply for grants for the government. You just have to apply for the ones that don't say 501c3. And there are a lot of them in there. Don't fret, because there are a lot in there. So you have to be careful with that. But again, like she said, we have to stress the UEI, sam.gov. If you need help with that, reach out to us. We'll make sure you get those done. What else for me, Dr. Sharon?
Another question, Brian, I responded to you, but let's have Janine just double check us on that. He got his 501(c)(3) status in October 2023, so it's very new. Mm-hmm. Have you found with a lot of these government grant opportunities, are they requiring 2 to 3 years worth of financials or program impact, or are there opportunities that come along sometimes for these newer early stage nonprofits?
Yes, there are. There will be some that will ask for historical information, but then there will be some that will allow you to be able to go ahead and apply. It's based on the work you're doing and what you need to do. And again, going back to what I said very early in here in the session, capacity to be able to fulfill what they're going to give to you. That's what they're looking at. So if you're saying, say you have, and I'm just making up something, say you have a building that you've purchased that belongs to you or the nonprofit, whatever, and you're able to use it right now. You just need monies to be able to maybe run the programs. You could definitely apply for something that will allow you to run the programs within the building and probably get it because you can show the capacity that you have it. Whereas if I didn't have a building already and I tried to apply for that, they probably wouldn't give it to me because I'm not far enough into the process to be able to do that. I don't have the capacity yet because I still have to get a building. So it's kind of like where you are in your process, whether or not they will do it. It's not when you actually incorporate it. It's how far are you in the process and are you able to handle what we can give to you to complete your programs?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Alex, did you have a question on behalf of one of our clients that I forget who it was, but a question on the grant process, government grants?
I think that's it. I know there's one opportunity that the department team is waiting on the opportunity to become live, and it's later than anticipated, and so we're just consistently checking on it. That's about it. Everything else has been answered. This has been great. Thank you.
Wow. Anybody else out there have any questions? I know I know someone from my local had been in here. I don't know if they are still in here or not, but I know they were in here and they're always doing stuff with grants. But one of the things we want to do is just make sure that everybody understands how these processes go, because just jumping on there and Mr. Mario, do you have any, Mario Hardy? Do you have any questions? Because this guy, let me tell you, in our community, he's a champion. He's always trying to get all the nonprofits together. He wants to find out everything there is about grants, government grants, or whatever. So I'm just curious, do you have a good question for me to answer that may be able to help the whole group? You're on mute, Mario. Yeah, you're on mute.
There we go.
There
No,
you go.
pretty much what I'm trying to do is just like I said, get as much information as possible. And this is really good information. I'm just trying to get like I guess in our community, it's just we have a lot of nonprofits they haven't even reached out to even begin this process. And this is really good information for them to know.
Good, good, good.
I think, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think the biggest gem you dropped is the fact that folks need to have their credentials with sam.gov, grants.gov, that UEI number and that cage number. And that process can take up to a month or two on the longer end. And so if you're looking for grants for the government right now, and you don't have that, you are wasting your time. So your first step really is to be focusing on getting that UEI number from sam.gov, having your grants.gov account. And like Janine said, you don't have to have your 501c3 designation yet. There are grant opportunities where as long as you're incorporated in your state. However, for majority of you, at least those in the nonprofit plug family who are dealing with 501c3s, you're going to want to have that status and go after that grant. So like we said a bazillion times, because it's that critical, have your UEI from sam.gov and your grants.gov account and really, excuse me, finish that whole process. So you have those numbers so that when you do find a grant, that's not your holdup, because that will literally botch your whole application process. And if you put time into doing that grant application and you don't have that, you'll be really upset. Alex and I have definitely shed a few tears. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, what's some information that nonprofits might need, but not necessarily have on hand that they might have to go searching for when applying for their sam.gov or grants.gov accounts? Like, what are some things they should be preparing for that?
Bank account number one. Make sure you have your bank account, your routing numbers and all that good stuff. Make sure you have that information.
Under the name of your entity, not your personal.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. Most certainly. So make sure that you are able to, it has your name on it, because many of these, a lot of people try to use their personal accounts and it bounces back. And then it sends a flag to the government. And that's not good for you, because then they're going to take your SAM and you're going to have to go through all these other verifications in order to go forward. So that's not what you want. That's not what you want. I did see a message. Do we need to have an audit done to get certain grants like government grants? Well, good question. I love this question. Most certainly. Let me tell you something about audits. First of all, if you are a new nonprofit and you see something and they say, submit your last year's audit, go ahead and shut that page and go to a different grant, because that means you are not going to be qualified, period. Don't go around asking people, well, what can I know? If they're asking for an audit, they're essentially telling you, if you are a new nonprofit, you're not going to be able to be considered. So you would just move to the next grant. The next part of that is the audits are every year. You should have some type of way to reconcile your books, and you need a real CPA. I have a nonprofit CPA that I give to my clients so that because she understands the language and she knows what to do with it. But at the same token, make sure that every year you have something signed off by the CPA saying, hey, these are our financial records for the year. Everything is straight, everything reconciles, whatever. That's what you need, especially for the first, especially if you're not getting that much money. If you're not getting $50,000 or more, if you're getting less than 50, a good letter from your CPA signed off with your information on it saying these books are good. Because there's really not a big audit to do for something like that. Now, when you start getting a little bit over 50,000, you do need some audits done, but you need to have, it needs to be signed off just like a financial statement. You need to have financial statements. Most of the times, if you have a great financial statement, that will suffice for any foundation. Because most, if you're under $500,000, you usually don't have what they call audits all the time, every year. It's just usually when you get over a certain amount. Now, these larger places, somewhere like United Way or Easter Seals and all that, yeah, they're going to have big audits. But normally, if you're usually under 500,000, they're not really big audits. You might see a small audit here and there, but you have to kind of just make sure your books are being kept correctly. It has to be where they can see and they can actually understand where you're getting monies from. And your CPA should be able to put it together where it's your financial outlook for this past year, for 2023. You should have something that has your financial outlook in it. If you have that information and your CPA has signed off on it, that's the book you can hand them, or the sheets you can hand them, and they can see it. You can upload it, and they understand that you keep your books correctly, because that's what they're looking for. Nobody wants to give you $100,000 and you're not keeping your books correctly. So yes,
and let me just add to that too, the importance of what Janine is saying. And at our firm, what we recommend, and typically what we force our clients into, is QuickBooks. And we do offer financial management and accounting at our firm. What we don't like to see, because it is not best practice, is scratch shit on Excel. We don't like that in the grant world. So, and that's what a lot of folks start with as new nonprofits. And that's okay if you're brand new and you're starting out and you have some minimal expenses. As soon as you start having some major transactions, we're going to tell you, you need to get QuickBooks. You can get it through TechSoup.org. And then once you do that, it's about time that you have an accountant on there that does do your reconciliation so that you do have appropriate record keeping. That's also in your bylaws. More than likely, it's in your bylaws that you're required to keep correct and complete books and records anyway. So we're going to recommend that now. And we've had some clients that are early stage nonprofits, and they're just now getting $1 million grants, and they want to still keep Excel. Nope, I will not work with you, because that is not best practice. It's not appropriate. and come an audit, y'all are screwed. So we highly recommend, just to overemphasize what Janine's saying, in preparation for a potential audit or these awesome government grants, is that you do have financial management and accounting best practices at your nonprofit organization. And that typically means, on a minimal level, having QuickBooks, monthly reconciliations, appropriate profit and loss statements or statements of activity, that's synonymous in the nonprofit world, and balance sheets and your records available so that you do have everything ready to go should that be requested. And you also need that for grant reporting anyway. And when you have an account that's managing your books, they'll do classifications on your expenses so that it goes underneath that grant. So when your grantor says, hey, I need a report on your finances for X grant, here you go, because we did appropriate and complete record keeping.
That is so true. I mean, what she said, I use QuickBooks. I recommend that to everybody. Because QuickBooks is the easiest one that I know about. And there's so many things you can do, and you can also run payroll through it if you need to. So you can add on to QuickBooks as you go along. So yes, and you can get QuickBooks. You said through TechSoup. I forgot all about TechSoup, but I mean, it is a great tool to use. So yes, I'm telling you that it has helped me. And then, like you said, no one wants to listen, I don't want to see when you give me these scratch records and this is supposed to be your budget. What is that? I have seen people, I'm like, what is this? And then I'm like, listen, I'm sorry. You're going to have to go to my accountant and you're going to have to pay them to get this together because I can't read it. And then if you have to do the grant reports, like she says, everybody, not all of them, but many of them, especially if it's over a certain amount of money, they're going to ask you to give them a report on how you spent their money that they gave to you. And the easiest way to show it is through those books. You click a button, boom, and you have the information.
Yep.
So that's really, really good. So financials is great. Make sure you have those financials together. Make sure, and we didn't talk about the board that much, but I do want to go back to the board members just a little bit because, and this is government or non-government with the boards, you need to have a strong board. Please do not apply for a grant and not have board members. That's the worst thing you can do. You are no longer a nonprofit. You are a one person, wish I was a nonprofit, but it's really a sole proprietorship that they're looking at, and they're not going to give you any money. Okay. You are toast. They're going to be like, what is this? And then the other part about it, it's illegal. So they could come knocking at your door saying, what is this that you're doing? You're trying to funnel money through a nonprofit when you're really a for-profit. Don't do that. Even if you don't understand, don't do that. You have to have 3 people at least. I always tell mine to have an odd number. And when you're first starting up, I don't think you need more than 5 people on a board when you're starting up. Keep it small and keep it simple. And then also make sure you're having your meetings every quarter because they will check that. You need at least 4 meetings a year, 1 per quarter. Now you can have as many as you want, but those are required by law, 4 per quarter. Okay. So just make sure and make sure everything is being recorded. Now, here's the other thing that I say to my nonprofits. When you're getting your board together, and I know some of you all may cringe when I say this, but it is what it is. It's not enough to be involved. You have to be invested. If your board members are not able to give a certain amount of money per year, then you probably don't need them on the board because a person's going to be much more interested in what they're doing when they're giving you the money. It's the same like the funders. If I'm giving you money, I need to see what I'm giving you money for to make sure it's going on. So I always tell people, small nonprofits, you know what I say? I say, listen, make up something, $500 per person. No one says you have to write a check for $500, but can you raise $500 for our nonprofit and stay compliant as a board member? Those are the kind of boards that end up getting the millions of dollars because they are creating this whole thing where money is not really the object, our mission is, but we are putting monies together to get where we need to go. And when we are able to show that to funders, that's an exciting thing. They love that because you are investing in your own. You're not looking for them just to take care of you. You are able to try to hold your own, but you need help. And that's okay that you need help as long as you're trying to do something. It's kind of like you want me to give you something for nothing when you're not doing anything. But however, you are working to do something. So now we can help you get to the next level. So make sure you have people that are willing to put in. You don't necessarily have to put elected officials, and I would even X against that. You don't want to do that. You don't need to put people, you need to put people who have the same exact thought and feeling for that nonprofit that you have. You know, don't put someone on there. If you have a nonprofit that has dog lovers on there, don't put someone on there who's never had a dog or doesn't like dogs, because you don't want to mess up what you got going on. You see what I mean? So you want to put people on your board that have the same common interest. And if they don't have the common interest, they're probably not a right fit. And if they cringe when you tell them that there's an investment, and usually most of the board members don't say, I mean, if you tell somebody $500 a year, that's McDonald's money per month, $35, $40 a month. That's nothing. You know what I'm saying? But you want to say, you don't have to take it out your pocket, but you do need to raise this to show that we are in this together. And when people do that, I promise you, you have a stronger board. Your nonprofit is going to move forward, and you will be able to, spread out in the community because it's an effort, a concerted effort between the board. And like I said, it's not how many people on the board, it's how many active members you have on the board. And one of the things I teach with them is that you need to have some standards for your board. Get standards. Hey, you can't miss but X amount of meetings before we have to see whether you need to still be on the board. You need to do these things. You need to make sure you have the right people on your board. Your strong board and your budget set up correctly, whether your budget is $10 or $10 million, it still needs to be set up correctly. Those are the two things that will hurt you along the way if you don't have those together. Anybody got any questions about that, or you want to add something, Dr. Sharon?
Yeah, I just want to add, and then I'll have you emphasize some notes I'm putting in the chat box.
Okay.
But what we like to do is we like to have a give or get policy. Give or get. And just like Jamie was saying, if you're going to be on the board, what's cool about this funding is it's unrestricted. So this is that little bit of funds for your nonprofit organization that you guys can use from the board commitment to help with various parts of the organization that a grant doesn't cover or that a restricted donor doesn't want to cover. These are unrestricted funds that the board can use for program expansion, for payroll, for insurance, for whatever it is that the organization may have. Well, what a lot of times we do is in the bylaws, we may put a give or get policy, in the board welcome packet, a give or get policy. And just like Janine said, it doesn't mean you as an individual board member have to come up with those funds, but you're expected to leverage your network to bring in those funds. You may just cut the check and write it and have board member may just do that, but it's the expectation that that board member leverages their network to raise those funds. Just to give you guys an example, we usually recommend nonprofits start at $500 up to $2,500 if you're a new nonprofit. But if you're a long-standing nonprofit organization, there's a health center here in Los Angeles called Cedars-Sinai. It's a massive hospital, and their foundation is a $20,000 give or get policy. I just love using them as an example because it's just so wild. So keep that in mind. The other thing, Janie, and I was hoping you can cover to emphasize, one of our participants asked, is there any type of guide available that's designed for nonprofits in going through sam.gov?
I have not seen a sam.gov one out there.
I haven't either.
And I was gonna say, if you've seen one, let me know. But what I do
We'll
is,
make one.
yeah, we can make one, and we can actually, we can coordinate and do something and share it and have it on here, because I generally with my clients, I set up an hour with them and walk through it, and we just answer the questions on Zoom. So that's pretty much what we do. It's
That's what
not
we should do.
something, yeah, that's what we have to do in most cases. But I do want to answer this one question down here. Someone asked about board members and pay.
That's
Yes,
the next one I was just gonna have you
that's
cover.
very important. Very important. Number one, no board member is paid. Nothing.
Ever.
Now, they're like, well, if the board members aren't paid, then let me stop you. An employee of a nonprofit may be paid. If you are on the board and you're an employee, there has to be two separate descriptions, and you can't do the same thing at the same time. If you're on the board and you are an executive director, you may be paid as an executive director, and it has to be the duties that an executive director does that is outside of the scope of being a board member. And you have to be a W-2 employee, because if you come on as a contract employee, that is going to look kind of funny to the government. So you need to be a W-2 employee to do that. Now, I know people that have been the president and maybe they are working inside of the nonprofit. You have to pay what is the same pay for the area that you are in. Board members can get perks. So say I sit on the board now, if I have a company car and say, hey, board members can use the company car, they can go up to the big cabin on the hill if they want to, things like that, or I even give you a gift card. I can give you a gift card, but you have to be careful that it's not something that looks like it's pay. But if I give you something for Christmas, say, hey, everybody can go and eat at this fancy restaurant, here's your gift card. Those are things that you can give to your board members. Now, board members can be paid back if they, first of all, in order to get paid back, you would have had to have already given your amount that you owe. So if it's a $500 for this board member, you're fine. But if I say, okay, we need to get a venue and it's $2,500. If you get general operating funds and it's agreed upon that they're putting up the personal money, you can pay the board member back as long as it comes out of a general operating fund. But it's not something that you're going to pay them up front. If you're paying for something up front, then the board member doesn't need to put anything out. So you have to be careful and take very, very good records about that. So just remember, board members are never paid, only employees. And if they are an employee, you have to make sure those duties are separated so that there can be a distinct difference between what they're doing as a board member and what they're doing as an employee. And when they go representing the company, you have to represent either one or the other.
Beautiful. I love it. Yep. That's the same message we give too. Okay. We have a couple minutes left. Janine, what is one last major gem you can drop for us on government grants and those interested in the government grant sector?
The biggest thing is pretty much the minute you get your EIN, let me just tell you, the minute you get your EIN for your nonprofit, go ahead and sign up for your sam.gov registration. That's the best thing to do. You'll have it out of the way. So when all your other paperwork and everything comes back, you're ready. You can go ahead and start applying because you already have gone through what most people have to wait and go through later. Get that out of the way. Get everything done so that you are in position to receive, whether it's a government grant or a regular grant. Make sure you're grant ready. And there are things that you need to do that. And that's one of the biggest things. So that's my biggest gem. Make sure
Love it.
you got sam.gov and you got grants.gov. And if you don't know how to use grants.gov as of yet, start with something small like the Grant Gopher. That's going to help you out a lot.
Absolutely. I love it. Y'all, that is it for today's Lunch and Learn. These hours go by so fast. For those of you that are new, we do this twice a month. We have a Lunch and Learn, and it will always and forever be free. We cover a different nonprofit topic each time. We always record it. So if you miss one or can't come to one in the future, or you want to go back and re-listen, we have all the recordings on our YouTube channel at The Nonprofit Plug. Thank you so much to everyone joining us today. Janine, if you want, you can drop your contact info in the chat box. those of you who are interested, you can always go to the nonprofitplug.com. You can reach out to us and we can always connect you to Janine as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here at the Nonprofit Plug Lunch and Learn. We'll see you all at the next one in February.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great rest of the week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.